Good morning. We're going to get started with an invocation led by Pastor Josue Araujo. Close enough, Pastor? Representing First Church OKC, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by C.C. Parton of Girl Scouts Troop 406. Please stand as you are able.
Lord, we know that this is the day that you have made, so we choose to rejoice and be glad in it. We wouldn't want this meeting today without your blessing, so we call upon you to bestow your blessings upon what happens in this room this morning. Lord, I pray that every journey that has led every person to the place where they are here today is one that has been led by you. So we pray, please, surround us now. May we be overwhelmed not by worries or concerns or perhaps even by business, but first by your presence. Let your joy overflow. Let your strength be within us. Let love rule our conversations, and everything we do may bring glory to your name, for that is the reason why we are here. We pray blessings over the leadership of the city, over the mayor and staff, and all that give of themselves for the work of the city and for the glory of your name. Please bless this time, and may what we do here, Lord, bring a smile to your face this morning. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor, and thank you, Cece. Great job. All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order. This is I guess our final budget briefing of the budget cycle, and so it will be mostly in the hands of the city manager and his team, though we will have towards the end of the meeting a couple of executive sessions that we deferred from last week's very lengthy meeting. So with that, I arrive at item 3, and I turn it over to you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. So this morning we have 3 departments that are on today to present the budget: Public Works Department, the Utilities Department, and Airports. And then we'll have a presentation of the budget comments by our Budget Director, Chris York. And so we're going to start off with Public Works. So Debbie Miller, our Public Works Director, is going to present the Public Works Department budget.
Good morning, Debbie Miller, Public Works Director. I'm here to present the Public Works budget for this next year. First, I'd like to thank staff who assisted in preparing this budget. I have Billy Little, our business manager, Mike Miller, our financial specialist, and Brick is assisting with the presentation. I also would like to thank our division heads who were assisted in this. Our mission, we are over infrastructure construction and maintenance. We do private construction review and inspection and emergency first response services to live, work, and play in a supportive community. This next slide shows our proposed personnel by division. Our largest division is our streets and drainage maintenance at 167 employees, and our smallest, our administration and engineering, at 31. This next slide shows the responsibilities Public Works has in the city. We have 620 square miles, which is a very large city with a lot of infrastructure that we oversee. We have over 4,000 streets, which translates to over 8,000 lane miles, and we have 804 signalized intersections. This is our organization line of business. We have 7 divisions: administration, traffic services, engineering, stormwater quality, streets and drainage, field services, and our project management. This aligns with our strategic business plan and LFR that was updated in the fall of 2023. This next slide shows our present budget for fiscal year 24 with the fiscal year 25 coming up. You can see the main changes are with the engineering, streets and drainage, and traffic services. We decreased the engineering budget. There was a change in the way that we are handling our utility cut repairs. And so instead of utilities providing payback to the general fund, they are going to take care of that themselves. So that is a reduction. We also show, we are reorganizing our traffic ops into traffic management, creating a new division called traffic services. So that's the other major change that you see here. Overall, we have a 5% decrease, which is a 2% budget decrease, and a utility cut repairs. So that's the major difference there. This shows the major budget changes that you'll see. We have a change in personnel, and we also had the reorganization for the Traffic Services Department. We have a net reduction of 5 positions, which were all vacant. We are adding a position to our grants management and project management, and a couple of positions to our financial section in administration. This shows our budget by funding source. This shows the different sources that provide for our funding for both operation and non-operating. As you can see, we've got impact fees and Better Streets, Safer Cities, general fund, and drainage utility. Our overall budget is $255 million. Our operating budget here by our divisions shows, of course, that streets and drainage is the largest, with administration and stormwater quality and field services. Now, I need to make sure you guys understand that the bond is not included in this operating budget. Our first division that we'll talk about is administration. This provides support to all the other divisions, and from project process, from inception to design and final completion. This ranges from executive leadership, financial management, human resources, and information technology. This division has 31 positions and a budget of $12.9 million. This slide I wanted to show, we are really looking for innovative ways to improve our efficiency and to bring our department into the 21st century. This is showing pavement management, how we're going through and developing a new pavement management system, a modern one, where we're actually using more data to make that together. Our next division is engineering. This provides bridge maintenance strategy, plan review, payment, condition inspection, and bridge replacement plan. We have 3 sections: the bridge, drainage, technical review, and paving. There are 31 positions, and this budget is $5.7 million. Plan review, technical review, is a very big part of this section. They review the plans for private development. They work with the developers, consultants, and the contractors. This slide shows the permits, from the history of the permits from fiscal year 17 on up. The purple are permits, the blue are the plans that we've reviewed. Permits are starting to come down. We had a spike last year. The plans are actually coming down from 757 to 416 this year. And we're real excited about this slide. We've worked really hard, staff has worked very hard to keep our plan review down to under 4 weeks. This shows that since August of 23, we have been able to achieve that. We've put on some additional staff, and we do have a consultant that is helping us with that. Another thing that staff has worked on, we put out a survey last year to the development community to ask them, how are we doing? What do you need from us? How can we improve? And the main thing that we received from them was communication. So we now have a quarterly newsletter that goes out. We have had a contractor workshop where we had over 100 contractors come in, and they were shown how to do work with the city, work orders, stormwater quality permits, and all different aspects of private construction. We also held an engineering town hall meeting where we gave them updates on our latest changes and also allowed them to do question and answers. Our next division is project management. They provide construction-related services through inception, which is contract administration, design and final completion of all capital project improvements. We have the contract administration, facilities, who handle all of the city building facility projects, infrastructure project management, which are streets, drainage, bridge, traffic, and grants management, which are handling our ARPA funding and any additional grants funds that we may receive. This is kind of a busy slide. The blue here are the bond projects that we have completed and expect to complete this year. The sales tax is the purple. You can see that the sales tax is slowly winding down. We are almost finished with that. We do have a few streetscape projects that we are in completing, but we do hope to complete 152 projects awarded in this fiscal year. This is our miles resurfaced. Public Works always strives to have at least 100 miles resurfaced every year. This year, it looks like we may be able to reach the 130 mark. Field Services is the next division that we'll talk about. They do inspection for infrastructure projects, provide survey services. They handle all the private inspections for the developing community, for projects that are going to be transferred to the city for maintenance. They handle the public inspections, driveway inspections, right-of-way inspections. They also provide utility locates for us. They have 49 positions and their budget is $4.8 million. Here you can see a couple of pictures. On the left, the inspectors are out watching forms being set to make sure that they meet all of the city requirements. On the right, you can see where we have survey services. We can provide topographic surveys. We also have a drone where we can do aerial surveys also. This shows the inspection work orders for the last few years. We expect this year to be pretty even with last year at 525. Stormwater quality management, they provide inspections, enforcement, technical services, household hazardous waste services, emergency response for residents. We want the residents, the businesses, and government agencies comply with the 404 Clean Water Act, so we help them achieve that. They have 31 positions with a budget of $4.1 million. This shows their year in review last year. They had a very successful year. They had over 1,000 participants in the Adopt a Street and Curbs to Creek programs. They removed 8.4 million pounds of floatable debris in the creeks and rivers in Oklahoma City, and they distributed 409 rain barrels. This is our household hazardous waste facility. This is located at 1621 South Portland, and this is open to all residents of Oklahoma City, for city employees. We also do have MOUs with the surrounding communities. In this facility last year, they collected over 796,000 pounds of waste, and this is waste that did not go into the landfill or into the waterways. Every year we have a special collection event where we collect ammunition, tires, computers, prescriptions. These are items that are not accepted at the household hazardous waste facility. This year was exciting. We had 645 participants, which is the largest amount of people we've had participate before, and we collected over 251,000 pounds. Oh, and next year's collection is April 12th, so keep that on your calendar. Our next division, which is our largest, is our Streets and Drainage Maintenance Division. They have 168 positions, a budget of $20.6 million. They handle the base repairs, drainage maintenance, they do pothole, they do rural road maintenance. Here are some pictures that are on the street side of the shop. You can see up in the top left, They are working on a base repair, which is a larger repair than a pothole when the street gets to be that bad, and we can just do a small replacement to get that repaired. That's what that is. The bottom left shows a pothole repair where they put the asphalt in and using the roller to flatten that out. In the top right, we show our crews out there. They are doing resurfacing in a rural area. And in the lower right, you can see the rural road maintenance where they're doing some bartage repair. This is the condition of our city streets. The annual survey shows streets are extremely important to our residents. We measure our street conditions called PCI, Pavement Condition Index, and this is a range from 0 to 100, where 0 is the worst and 100 is the best. So we've always strived to get to a 70. If you notice, back in 2013, we started at 63, and last year we got all the way up to the 69. We're hoping this year we'll be up to 70. We believe that this is from all of the work from the Better Streets, Safer City sales tax and the bond, and we look forward to keeping this going on the upward trajectory. This shows our potholes repaired. When I first came back to Public Works, it was 106,000 potholes that we were repairing every year. We have been able to get that down. You can see it's kind of fluctuated. We believe that the sales tax and the bond, the work that we've put into all the streets has brought this down. If we're fixing the worst streets, then the potholes are not as much. And we hope to bring this down further by completing the 2017 bond and possible future 2025 work. This is on the drainage side of the shop. The drainage section, or the drainage side, they handle a lot of mowing on creeks. They do a lot of maintenance repairs on our storm sewer system. And this year, they expect to do over 2,500 repairs. So traffic services is the new division that we've created by combining our traffic management and our traffic ops. We did this to streamline our maintenance of signals and the repair of those. So they also do plan reviews, speed studies. They do the record contracts for the Traffic Commission. We also have the ASAP, the Alternative Speed Abatement Program, that was launched in 2023. This next slide shows our LED upgrade status. This is a federal requirement that went into effect last year, and so we are working on completing the conversion of the incandescent bulbs to the LED bulbs. We have a total of 804 intersections. We're now at 56% that we have converted. The great thing about the LED bulbs is they're more efficient, they last longer, and they allow the intersections to be put on a battery backup. So we have 130 intersections that have been completed and are on battery backup at this time. This shows some of the crews. On the left, you can see they're doing some signal maintenance, putting up a new signal head. On the right, you can see the long line machine. The crews are really excited. They've worked to get this operational again, and they've been out practicing, and they're ready to go strike some streets. Here is another program that we have in traffic services. It's our honorary street sign topper program. We have this for districts, so you can see like the Asian district on the right, they can apply and provide the signs and we'll install those. Or if you have a particular street you would like to have an honorary name, you can do that also. This slide shows our traffic services. This is our monitoring system for intersections. You can see the GIS showing the locations of the intersections. We're able to look at the intersections themselves through a camera, and we can look and see what the status is and see if there's an issue, if we can fix it in the office, or if we need to send our crews out. So this is Public Works, a year in review. This is what we strive to do every year. 100 miles of streets improvements, 60,000 pothole repairs, 21 impact fee projects awarded. We'd like to do 12,000 infrastructure plans reviewed, 32,000 right-of-way inspections, collect 7,000 pounds at HHW, distribute 600 rain barrels, and issue 200 stormwater permits. So that completes my presentation. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thanks, Debbie.
I do have a few questions. First, I'd like to just say to the PCI, I've had neighborhoods reach out asking about streets, and I usually send them the map that you all have online so that they can kind of keep on top of what we're seeing. And I've always heard rave reviews about the map, so I just wanted to relay that that kind of public-facing information is very helpful for residents to kind of know, maybe they think their road or their street right in front of them, but actually the street just next, it's still in their neighborhood, but they can have a kind of broader view of how to advocate to get their streets taken care of. I did want to ask, you mentioned the ASAP program, the Alternative Speed Abatement Program. I'm curious if you have a little bit more information, or maybe it's for another meeting to give a presentation, just kind of to dig into it's really, I guess, the first full year of the program, and I'm kind of interested to hear what we were able to accomplish and kind of what the results of what infrastructure people were, applying for, and maybe how many people have on a waiting list. I'm kind of curious to hear if you have any of that, or maybe this is a request to have a presentation in the next few weeks on that.
I can provide you more information. I can tell you last year we had 9 projects that were completed. This year so far we have 7.
Okay.
We have 3 that are under construction, so I would be glad to get you more information.
Okay, that'd be great. And then my last question is on the hazardous waste collection. I've had a number of residents over the years ask about sharps and needle collection. I know there are some other neighboring communities who do that kind of, I think it's Midwest City maybe has that as one of the items they collect, and especially for people who have diabetes or other, they take other medications that require injections. It's something that's come up about kind of how difficult and complicated it can be to dispose of those. And I'm curious if we've explored or looked at how we can maybe loop that into whether it's like a special collection event like you all do, or if it's like on the regular rotation as part of the hazardous waste facility collection.
Well, I know it's considered medical waste, so it's not something we're able to accept at HHW. I know that their DEQ has some information on that, and I have a flyer I would be glad to send to you.
Okay, I'd be
to show you
interested
that.
in that. And I guess I'd be interested to learn how, because I think I've talked to Norman and Midwest City about how they do that collection. So if there's any information about why we're not able to do it, but they are, if they maybe contract in a certain way where the provider shows up and does it or something, is the sort of, but we're the intermediary. I'd be curious to learn how we might be able to incorporate that, because especially if folks are already coming to drop off, this stuff, maybe they can also be bringing that stuff and kind of streamline things for residents and just make it easier to get those things to the right disposal instead of maybe path of least resistance of putting them in the landfill. So
We'll check into that for you.
thank you.
I just had a quick question. I wanted to talk about, and I'm not sure if you talked about it before I walked in, our procurement process and as far as our vendors are concerned, where we are with including the more diverse populations in that process, as well as if we have a list of accomplished projects that have included minority contracting, and specifically to our, not just our MAPS programs, but some of our bigger projects, but also not just our big projects, but technically our smaller projects that we need our local hands on within our communities. So just curious if we have any information on that, if we've been able to increase that vendor list, or what I know Urban League is working on a program with us to ensure we get some more folks to the table, but just not sure if we have something to report, but what does that look like for us?
I can get you that information. I do have a young gentleman who has started with us who is very excited about this program, and he is reaching out to all the different city departments, but also to other agencies outside and other groups, contractors. He's reaching out to Metro Tech. I can get you an update on that, but I will tell you he is excited and he's reaching out.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good work. So next up, we have the Utilities Department, and Vanessa Aguilar, the Business Manager for Utilities, will present the budget.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Vanessa Aguilar with the Utilities Department. Here to present to you, we have the 2025 Utilities Department budget. If you want to follow along in the budget book, this can be found on page C169 of the budget book. So our mission statement for the Utilities Department is our commitment to providing water, wastewater, and trash collection services throughout central Oklahoma to safeguard public health and the environment, to support public safety, and enable economic prosperity. The department has also established core business initiatives that align to City Council priorities. This, along with our mission statement, help us in our strategic planning and our annual budget planning process each year, to where any of our budget initiatives align to one or more of these core business initiatives. Before we get into the details of our 25 budget, I'd like to give you a little bit of background of the budgetary challenges that the department has faced and how we're looking to address this through our initiatives. First, Aquat has seen inflationary cost increases, unprecedented cost increases to supplies and to services across the board. And as an example, electricity has gone up, chemicals have more than doubled in the last 2 years for our department. Supply chain challenges. We have also experienced, since the pandemic, challenges in being able to receive orders that we have submitted for parts and materials or even services. As an example, brass parts, in some instances, were taking anywhere from 20 to 30 weeks from when we placed an order to receiving parts. Trash trucks was another area where we were seeing several delays as well due to supply chain challenges. And last but not least, difficulty in being able to recruit and retain a qualified workforce. The Utilities Department has had over 100 vacancies on average year to year over the last 6 years, and a high turnover rate in some of our operations division. This has left our tenured employees with being able to meet our service expectations for our customers. Another example of this is our Utilities Department employees. About 49% of our staff has 5 years or less of experience. So in future slides, we'll be addressing how we're looking to address some of these challenges. Overall, we have increasing O&M cost, higher borrowing rates as well, and the cost of construction has gone up. So through our budget, we're looking to address this by rephasing, rescheduling capital projects in order to make sure that we are funding our O&M expenses and our debt service requirements. On this slide here, you see the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust funding source for our budget in the coming year. The largest portion is debt construction funds proceeds. This is $633 million, which includes state revolving fund loans and short-term financing through a program called commercial paper that we utilize. Approximately $555 million will go to fund water capital projects, and about $78 million will fund wastewater projects. The next three large revenue sources come from our service charges. $437 million come from water, wastewater, and solid waste combined. Aquat recently completed a bond transaction from which some of those revenue bond proceeds, approximately $62 million, will go to fund capital projects in the coming year. We also have withdrawals from cash reserves, about $29 million. This is $21 million for water projects, about $2 million for wastewater, and $5 million for solid waste. This is projects that were initially scheduled in 2024 to be funded with cash and are being rescheduled in 25, so we're reallocating that cash to fund those projects. The remainder of the sources on this slide is about $18 million. This includes system development charge revenue of about $6 million. We have flow fees of about $2 million. Other sources, which include billing services fee chargeback revenue, and we have recreational or non-ratepayer revenue of about $1 million. On this next slide here, you see our funding uses. Our total budget about $1.2 billion, and here's the breakout of how we're planning to utilize the budget in the coming year. The largest portion, almost 70%, is for capital improvement projects. This is $663 million for water projects, $143 million for wastewater, and approximately $9 million for solid waste management. We do have a slide later on to go into the details of the highlights for this capital improvement project. The next largest portion of our budget is city utilities operation. This is the portion of our budget that is in the city side for the utilities department. About $106 million is what we forecast to do cash transfers from the trust to the city to fund city employee salaries, benefits, and some of the day-to-day expenses in our line of businesses. The proposed budget in the budget book is $112.8 million. That primary difference between our planned transfers and the proposed budget is operating reserves. We budget for operating reserves, but in any given year, those aren't necessarily funds that we forecast to spend or plan to transfer. So it's about 94% of our proposed budget. Trust operations at $96 million in Aquit. This primarily funds our billing administrative services, payments to the city, professional services, multi-year contracts for water and wastewater. Now, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we have debt construction funds proceeds, and that eventually becomes principal and interest payments that we make on our loans or revenue bonds. And so the debt service that you see here, $77 million, that's the forecasted amount of our annual debt payment for all of those projects that we financed with debt. As we continue to execute our capital program, we do expect this debt service to triple over the next 10 years as we continue to execute our program. Solid waste service contracts of about $50 million. Approximately 60% of our solid waste service area is served by our contractor. Bulky recycling and trash collection services is about $37 million in the coming year. Some of the other large contracts in solid waste include landfills, where we have 4 landfills in the surrounding area within the city with which we contract with. That's projected to be about $8 million. Some of the other service contracts for solid waste include street sweeping and fleet maintenance. We also have a contract with an operator to operate and maintain our 4 wastewater treatment plants in the city. That's projected to be about $24 million in the coming year. That's a 24/7 operation. McGee Creek Operations, that's a planned transfer of $10 million to transfer to the McGee Creek Authority for operations and maintenance and for their capital program. McGee Creek had some projects that were originally scheduled in 2024, and some of those projects rescheduled from 24 into 25. And last on this slide, we have non-ratepayer activities. These, again, are expenses related to recreational or non-operating sources. Now we'll go into a little bit more detail on the city budget for the utilities department. Here you see about overall a 4% increase from the FY24 original adopted budget to the proposed FY25 budget, which is about $3.9 million. You can see the breakdown of the increases or decreases to the budget, annual salary adjustments and benefit adjustments of about $5.5 million. We have a salary reserve reduction of about $927,000. This is primarily due to right-sizing the forecasted cost of living adjustment in the coming year. We have department position improvements in this coming year proposed of $259,000. That includes primarily adding 1 full-time position, a SCADA systems analyst, to help support our Tinker Air Force Base line of business. This position will be fully funded by the federal government. The department also has other add-deletes that we've included in our position improvement for some of our operation divisions. We have department services and supplies improvements of over $900,000, addressing, as I previously mentioned, those inflationary cost increases. We have department transfers from our city-funded budget to Aqua Trust operations. We'll go into a little bit more detail here in the future slide, but that's centralizing the funding source into one location under trust operations. And city chargebacks of about $39,000. Now, even though Aqua is not sales tax funded, we have mirrored the city's initiative to have a conservative budget in the coming year, adding only one full-time position, bringing our position count to 826 in the utilities department. Now, I will note again that one position is fully funded by the federal government. Now, how are we addressing some of our budgetary challenges? You might recall the first challenge I mentioned was inflationary cost. Within our city budget, we're looking at increasing some of our lines of businesses, services and supplies, as they've seen increases in these areas by 37 and 33%. So we're adding about $913,000 on the city operation to help continue to procure parts and materials necessary to conduct our business. On the trust operations side, I mentioned treatment chemicals. This has doubled in the last 3 years, going from $6.6 million to a forecasted budget of $13.5 million in the coming year due to supplier increases in the market. We're also looking at centralizing some of our contracts, root control, fats, oils, and grease, and some of our cell phone services funding from the city budget over into the trust budget. This centralizes the funding source where in our trust operations we are already paying for some of these similar like activities. And also in relation to the root control and fats, oils, and grease contract, this allows Aqua to be able to respond more quickly as it's currently conducting a condition assessment program under our capital program. As engineering receives findings and reports from this assessment, we'll be able to work with line maintenance to issue service orders or work orders and respond to the needs based on the finding. So it's also for agility and for multi-year contract funding purposes. So ensuring adequate funding for services and supplies is crucial in meeting various LFR measures, such as water treatment and ultimately maintaining compliance with water drinking standards. On this next slide here, we show you one of our LFR measures, which is 100% of water quality tests meeting primary drinking water standards. And primary drinking water standards refers to those standards by EPA that are related to safety and requirements for public health. You can see in the dotted blue line, our target is 100%. And overlapping that target is our actual performance year by year in the solid blue line, which is meeting 100% each year, our performance. The columns shown at the bottom represent how many drinking tests were actually performed year to year. There is slight variation year to year, and that's primarily due to how many water treatment units were in operation that given year to meet water system demand. Similarly, on this next slide, we have another LFR measure that we track, which is 100% of water quality tests meeting secondary drinking water standards. Now, secondary drinking water standards is a little bit different from primary. Primary is in regards to the EPA requirements for safety and public health, where secondary drinking standards is more for the aesthetics, the color, the taste, the odor, and the hardness of the water. And so you can see here, again, our target in the dotted blue line is 100%. Our actual performance shows a slight decline into FY23, but we expect this to continue to improve and meet our target going into the future. Now, the reason for that slight decline is a couple of things. I mentioned the cost of chemicals increasing significantly, right? And so also coupled with in 2023, we had a hot, dry season. So it took more chemicals to be able to treat for the aesthetics of the water. Again, the blue column chart shows you the number of tests that were conducted in any given year. One of the other challenges that we're looking at addressing is the supply chain challenges. And we're able to do that by doing a department-wide increase of our stock levels in our centralized warehouse, coupled with adjusting inventory reorder points. So adjusting that reorder point, knowing that we're going to order parts before they get too low in our stock in our centralized warehouse. That will allow us to ensure that we are not impacted for critical and hard to find parts. Our largest customer of our centralized warehouse is our line maintenance division. And so we are adding about $1.1 million in additional funding in trust operations to ensure that our warehouse is able to meet this commitment and overcome the supply chain challenges. This ensures that our staff has access to crucial supplies, allowing them to achieve our LFR goal of completing 75% of total work as planned and scheduled. On this next slide here, you'll see another LFR measure where we're tracking that. This is for our line of business, line maintenance, within the water section. Our target, the dotted blue line, shows an initial target of 70%, adjusting that upward to about 75% in later years. You can see that actual performance in the solid blue line we've met or exceeded performance year to year. Now, some of the influences or impacts, what factors impact this particular LFR measure, here we're tracking the work that we want to do as planned and scheduled. One of the factors that might impact that is when we have unplanned work orders, which are urgent cases that are received by line maintenance. We refer to those as code 1s and code 2s. So those are critical in nature, and those can vary year to year depending on the weather, on the environment, and other factors. So those are the ones that are typically unplanned, but we're addressing those as well. Now, as we look at initiatives that the department has implemented to ensure that we're able to recruit and retain a qualified workforce, the department has done several initiatives. Several years ago, the City of Oklahoma City launched its employee engagement survey. The results for the Utilities Department initially showed an employee engagement score of a 3.49 out of 5 for engagement. The results indicated, according to Gallup, that the Utilities Department did have some room for improvement in areas to help with employee engagement. And so since then, the department has been evaluating employee perceptions and developing initiatives to improve two-way communications among employees, between supervisors, managers, and other employees. The first thing that we did is we've developed and we've now implemented that comprehensive communication plan. We've established standard procedures for using communication channels to ensure that messages from the city, from utilities leadership, division leaders, reach all employees in a consistent manner. We're also evaluating solutions to implement an employee hub. This will further evolve our employee engagement to ensure that employees are able to reach information through a digital or electronic means, and this is also going to help with our employee recognition program. The picture that you see here is of one of our most recent onboarding program. One of the other initiatives that the Utilities Department has implemented has been a 2-day tour for all new hires in the Utilities Department. We get to take them around to our facilities and give them tours so they can see all of the different lines of businesses. We also have staff and division leadership do presentations so that all the new hires can learn about roles and responsibilities and opportunities within the department, so that in the case that one of those new hire employees in their career, they find that their current position no longer aligns to their career goals, our intent is that they have been introduced to other areas of opportunities within our department to help us to retain our workforce. Another area that we've made improvements to is we've updated our Utilities University management training. Utilities University was launched by the department over 10 years ago to help us with succession planning. Track 1 is an initial curriculum that was established and required for all supervisors in the department with over 130 hours. This initial training would help supervisors to become effective supervisors. Now with Track 2, we're further developing our program by ensuring that supervisors are equipped with training such as coaching, mentoring, leadership, team dynamics, and advanced classes such as business writing. So the expected benefits include ongoing enhancement of both soft and hard skills, workforce development, the opportunity for employees to have training that equips them for career advancement, and ultimately fostering a positive organizational culture. Now, with these initiatives, we're also complementing that by utilizing technology efficiencies and investments in technology. Some of those investments that the Utilities Department is doing is automated meter reading and mobile workforce implementation. A new LFR measure that we will be measuring in the coming year related to this initiative is to have 100% of employees complete their career development plan, partnering with their supervisors to establish those goals, having mid-year evaluations, giving the opportunity to the supervisor to coach and mentor employees to ensure that employees have a roadmap for the coming year. So every year, the City of Oklahoma City conducts a resident survey. This slide here shows you a snapshot of the most recent survey and some of the core services provided by the Utilities Department, which include water, wastewater, trash collection, and customer service. Overall, we have rated an average of 31% higher than cities of similar size and about 26% higher than the national average in all of these categories. Residential trash collection continues to be one of the highest rated services of the city. And overall, despite our budgetary challenges, we're still delivering a high level of service to our customers. And so this last slide here shows you an overview of our capital improvement program. $815 million is planned project awards in the coming year. One of our keystone project is the Second Atoka Pipeline project. This is crucial in ensuring that we have access to our water supplies from southeast Oklahoma. The construction of the Second Atoka Pipeline, which is a 100-mile raw pipeline from southeast, will allow us to transport all of our water rights from southeast. In FY25, we're looking at awarding 3 pump stations and 2 pipe segments as well. The picture in the lower corner shows you one of the projects already underway with some of that pipeline ready to be laid. Some of our other projects include the Hefner-Draper Western Interconnect. This is an ongoing project. In FY25, we anticipate to award the last 3 segments of this project, which will allow the Hefner and Draper water treatment plant service area to be a backup, or in case of an outage at one of the plants, this will help with system resiliency and reliability. We have about $33 million planned for neighborhood line replacements in the coming year. This is replacement of water and sewer mains throughout the city. We have improvements at Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant, planned of about $44 million. These improvements include biosolids and odor control, electrical system improvements for components that have reached the end of their useful life, and aeration system improvements. The picture in the top corner is that of the South Canadian Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is currently undergoing similar improvements. We have a treatment plant expansion project going from 6 to 9 MGD. That picture is of the aeration basin at South Canadian. We also have improvements planned at the Draper Water Treatment Plant of about $83 million. That includes clear well rehabilitation, filter rehabilitation, and other improvements. We're doing about $2 million worth of improvements at our solid waste facility operations center, and we're continuing our lift station replacement program. About $14 million is planned in the coming year. And so with that, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Vanessa. Any questions?
I have a couple. First, thank you for the presentation. One of the things, I know you mentioned it within the workforce, but just curious, because one of the things first things I wrote down from your presentation was high turnover rate. Why are we seeing a high turnover rate, especially with the programs that are included within that workforce component that you talked about? Just curious.
And so some of the programs that we've implemented have been recently to combat some of these challenges. So our goal is to be able to retain them. Within our operational divisions, we are seeing that high turnover rate, and some of it might be just different opportunities that they're able to promote into, whether it's within the city and other departments or within our department. So some of our positions that we're seeing that are entry-level positions. So we are looking at having those career path opportunities and continue to share the message of the opportunities that we have within our department to be able to help with the retainment aspect of it.
So to that, my next question, as far as entry-level positions, do we know about what that salary may be as far as what we're talking about entry-level? Is it like $15 an hour or less?
I believe it's a little bit higher than that. I know Chris is very familiar with the.
Good morning, Chris Browning, Utilities Director. Councilwoman, our minimum pay is nearly $20 an hour. Plus, they get a fair amount of overtime. But the other thing that also comes into play is that many of our positions require state board certification. So during that first year, we have auto progress for about half of our employees, particularly the entry-level positions, where once they obtain their first license, they're promoted. And then their next license, they're promoted again. And all this happens in about a year. And we pay for all these the training and the testing and so on and so forth. So we try to encourage folks to stay on and auto progress. So after the first year, they're $25, $26 an hour. So it's pretty good pay. But I'm going to tell you, the work they do is really hard. Answering calls in a call center, 500,000 calls a year, and many of them, folks are not real happy with something going on. So it's pretty stressful. Trying to help somebody set up an account, close an account, those kinds of things. Fixing water mains when it's really cold or really hot, that's tough work. Reading meters, can you imagine? Walking 100 feet, bending down, looking at a meter, taking down the number, stand up, go 100 feet, do it again, 600 times a day. I mean, those are hard. Now, we're getting ready we're in the process of automating our meters, and so our biggest turnover are in those three areas. They're just really hard jobs, and some folks are just saying, this just isn't for me. Hopefully, we can get them to understand, if you don't like your first job, I didn't like my first job. So here are the opportunities. That's why we developed the onboarding program, to let people know, look, we have dozens and dozens of career opportunities, and we'll pay for the training. We'll help pay for college education. We will help people believe that this is a good place to be and want to stay here as a career. But those entry-level positions are just hard.
Okay, thank you for that. With those automated, if we're going automated, is that going to impede as far as us having that workforce that we need in pertaining to now checking those meters? Just curious.
When we automate, we require maintenance for that automation. So they're being transitioned from meter readers to meter service techs and trained accordingly.
And the automated meter reading also requires someone still to drive by.
Oh, yes.
Right, they're just able to do it more quickly because they're not actually walking the route.
Exactly. They'll still have to read, but there's a device in the truck where they just drive by and it automatically collects the reading. So we're still going to have some meter readers, but the majority of the workforce will transition into the techs.
Thank you. I think it's important for us to talk through that, because as we look at how we're automating and contracting and different things out, that we still need that workforce to still do work.
Yes, ma'am.
So
We don't
that.
anticipate any rifts at all. We haven't had one since I've been here, and we don't anticipate having one into the future. We'll absorb folks into different roles, probably at higher levels.
Okay. A last question, since we're talking about getting jobs, what is the minimum, is there a minimum age requirement in order to do this work?
Our employees have to be 18. Many of them require CDLs. Driver's license, and we pay for that as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Thanks, Chris, for answering the questions, and Vanessa, great job on the presentation. Thank you. So next up, we have the airports, Department of Airports, and Jeff Mulder, our airports director, is going to provide us with an update on the airport's budget.
Good morning, everybody. Jeff Mulder from the airports. My note says that the airport's budget is on C3 of the budget book, so if you wanted to reference that. Before I get started, I want to recognize some staff. Melissa Fairbrush in our finance department certainly is a big part of this budget. Also, Scott, Keith, and Tara Sumlin from my staff, so just want to recognize them. So first slide is the mission of the airports: provide management, operations, development of the city's 3 airports to attendance users and general public so they can have a safe and efficient air transportation system. Next slide. We put this slide in, and it kind of highlights how we've organized ourselves with myself as the director, and then admin and operations. Tara Sumlin is essentially overseeing the admin part with finance, IT, and planning and development, and then Scott has business properties and the other frontline departments. We've kind of organized ourselves this way over the past year to try to help us keep up with the growth that we're receiving, and so that's how we've organized that. Next slide is, so our budget, it really falls into 2 pieces, and this is the first piece, which we would consider our city portion of the budget, $27,145,000. This really comprises mostly our personnel costs and some of the other services that I'll get into in just a moment, and then our trust budget is in addition to this, and I'll cover that after these first few slides. But that particular budget is parceled out based on those various areas: admin, commercial aviation, maintenance, property management, and general aviation. For this budget, we have made some changes in our positions, but they have been additions and deletions, so we don't have any new positions. Next slide, there we go. The overall changes, though, about $1.3 million in increases, and a lot of that has to do with our property insurance. It's a significant increase that we've seen over the last year or so. I would say over $1 million, and we are working with the city risk management department to try to address this issue, looking at what we actually are insuring as far as our property, looking for different ways to address this, maybe with higher deductibles, looking at some self-insurance, but it's become a significant issue for us as reflected in our budget. Next slide. So this shows you the full revenue picture for the trust at $211 million, and I'll run through some of the detail on those line items. You can see from the line items specifically, it includes building rents and landing fees. So that includes our tenants and our airlines, and of course the landing fees are our airfield charges to our airlines. Concessions and parking. Parking, we had an increase in parking rates last fall. That really was to address some capacity issues we were having, but so we've seen increased revenue from that. And our concessions includes our restaurants and gift shops and rental cars. Tenant capital contributions, I want to highlight that specifically. So we're doing a project, we're building a new aircraft hangar for one of our tenants, and it's a combination of state dollars and the tenants providing some money for it also. And that $7.5 million is what we expect we'll be getting from them this year for that project. Some of the other things that we have in there: fuel sales, customer facility charges. I want to highlight also the Mike Maroney Aeronautical Center. So we receive about $13 million from them for operations. Oil and gas, interest income, passenger facility charges is a fee we collect for capital projects from the customers. And then federal and state participation, that's our federal and state grants. And then carryover, project fund and senior lien maintenance. Project fund are the current capital projects that we have for this fiscal year. that we haven't been able to complete and that we're carrying over. And the senior lien maintenance is the fund for the Mike Maroney Aeronautical Center. So you take all of those things together, it's a fairly significant increase from the budget that we have this year, but a lot of that is in the carryover. So those are the capital projects that we are continuing into this next fiscal year. Next slide. So on the operating expense side, other services and fees, some of those things we're being impacted. As utilities mentioned, we're seeing some of the same cost increases that they are. Our service contracts, materials and supplies, all of those things, all those costs have gone up. The debt requirements, and then there's the $27,145,000 transferred to city airport operations. So that's what the trust transfers to the city for the costs. Reserves is what we plan to put into reserves for this next fiscal year. Then our capital outlay, $148 million, is by far our largest capital budget that we've had, but again, a lot of that is from carryover from this fiscal year. So next, I want to highlight a couple of the projects, or first of all, the overall program, and then some of the projects that we will have for this next coming year. And this particular slide shows you our 5-year capital program, about $358 million. A lot of our capital program is funded with FA grants, and the FA requires us to come up with a 5-year capital program. And you can see that the various amounts are divided into 4 areas: Will Rogers, Wiley Post, Mike Maroney, and Clarence Page. And you can see that every area location has pretty significant capital development. Next slide. And then this is for this fiscal year 25, again, divided into 4 different areas. A lot of significant activity there. And now we've got a couple specific projects I want to highlight for all of you. For that, here's the funding sources that provide that funding. So $52 million from the Airport Trust, 28 from grants, from federal grants, 18 from state grants. AAR is the tenant that I mentioned earlier that's providing some funding for the development of a hangar. Mike Maroney at $40 million, and then that gets us to $146 million. One of the things that we're taking advantage of is that we have some FA funding available for restroom renovations, and that's related to ADA requirements. Many of our restrooms, especially on the concourses, don't meet current ADA requirements, so we're using some of those grant funds to renovate all the restrooms on the secure side, except for the very new ones on the east end. And so that project gets underway now, and we'll expect to spend about $2.3 million of that for this next fiscal year. Next slide. This gives you a snapshot. If you hadn't been there in a while, that's what they look like today, and that's what we hope to look like here after the project's complete. This is the hangar that we are building for AAR, one of our major tenants at the airport. This will allow them to continue to expand. They have a lot of demand for hangars, and this will allow them to continue to grow. One of their major tenants is Alaska Airlines, and they have long-term agreements with them for maintenance. And the overall cost of the project is about $35 million. The state of Oklahoma is providing just under $20 million of that, and AAR is providing the rest. But we are building the hangar for them. Next slide shows you kind of a layout. For orientation, this is on the north side of their. As you go to the terminal, they're on the west side of the terminal. That series of buildings there, and this new hangar will go on the very north end near our fuel farm. So, as you travel to the airport, you'll see that coming out of the ground here over the next year. Passenger boarding bridges, we again are using some federal dollars, FA grant dollars for this. With the expansion that was done at the airport in 21, we ended up with 21 gates total. 4 of those were new boarding bridges, so the 17 remaining are old and in need of replacement. So we are already underway replacing 6 of those. We'll have another tranche coming up this year, so we expect to spend about $9.5 million for that project. Next slide just shows a photo of some of the boarding bridges that we have that will be replaced over the next couple of years. A project at Wiley Post Airport wanted to highlight, and so there's an air traffic control tower there. It's been there for a very long time. It needs to be updated and replaced. One of the challenges, it's not tall enough to see all the areas on the airfield. So we are in the planning stages of that project now, ultimately to cost a little over $16 million. The next slide just kind of shows you an illustration of it. So the building on the left is the current terminal building. The tower is in that building itself, and the new tower we expect to go adjacent to it, taller, so it'll be able to meet all the safety requirements. Wanted to highlight a couple of the LFR things that we track. One of the more important ones for us that we've seen an impact on our traveling public is our parking. And this shows you on an annual basis how many days we exceed 85% of our capacity. One of the things that this doesn't point out, though, is the peak activity that we see during the summer. So essentially what we saw last summer was essentially from beginning in May going through August, our garage filled up almost every day. So the impact on our customer is for the customer wanting to park in the garage. They show up to the airport, the garage is full. They'd have to find another adjacent lot to park into, extends their time. So we're trying to meet that demand. We have begun, we've hired an architect and we've begun the design process for adding another garage. Our passenger numbers, you can see they have steadily climbed out of the COVID era, and we hit 4.4 million passengers last calendar year. The first couple months of this year, we've had record months, so we expect we'll easily pass the number of passengers in calendar year 23 and 24. This shows you the percentage. You can see, of course, the big drops that were had during COVID, and the big recovery in 22, and a nice recovery in 23, and that continues here in 24. Just a quick snapshot of the 24 locations that we travel to. We have nonstop flights to over the year. We, as our regular conversations with our air carriers, looking for new opportunities and new routes and frequencies, but this gives you a snapshot of kind of where we're going today and our current air service. Wanted just to highlight just the various work departments that we have in some of the photos, but fuel maintenance. So we have our own fuel farm, and these are the folks that run that for us and serve all of our tenants at the airport. This is airfield operations. You can see they're out on the airfield, but they make sure the airfield is safe, meet all of our federal requirements. And this is the crew that handles all the maintenance on the airfield. And the front grounds and horticulture for all the landside the activity that we have, and making sure the airport's a good front door for the community. General aviation, we have two general aviation airports, Wiley Post and Clarence Page, and this is our crew that takes care of both of those airports. This is the admin folks here in the terminal building on the 3rd floor that do all the support for our frontline operations. Equipment maintenance, have quite a few vehicles that we have to operate our 3 airports, and these are the folks that take care of that. And then building maintenance, our terminal building that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they can make sure everything is operating every day. So that are some of the highlights of our budget, both the city portion and our trust portion of the budget, and be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a few questions. Thank you for the presentation. I'm curious to know, so this new garage that you're having an architect design, how much is the cost of building a new parking garage?
Preliminary estimates are probably $60 to $80 million.
And how much do you know how much it costs to operate a garage per year?
I don't off the top of my head. Generally, we find that on a compared to our other surface lots where you have a shuttle bus operation, they really aren't that far apart as far as operating cost, because a shuttle bus operation is very expensive, and you don't have a shuttle bus operation with the garage operation. So it's a balance. I mean, obviously, that's a large capital expenditure, but the thing that hasn't happened, we continue to see people in demand for parking. One of the challenges, of course, in Oklahoma is people like covered parking because of the weather that we see. as an interim step, before we are able to build another garage, we have a current surface parking lot that we're adding canopies to, so it gives our customers some cover from the weather. So we think that's going to certainly bridge the gap for the next couple of years before we're able to develop this other garage.
I ask because I think I'm concerned about, and feels like a very sort of if you build it, they will come scenario that we kind of continue to trap that we fall into, where parking gets at a capacity, and so we build more parking, so more people come to park. And I constantly have people asking me about why we don't have any public transit to the airport, and for a city of our sort of stature. And I'd recently spoken, probably in the last few months, with the director of Embark about, ideas that they had been playing with, because the RTA conversation about the RTA connection to the airport is quite a ways off. I was asking like what interim solutions could be presented, and there is a sort of little plan they have sitting on a shelf that could extend a route that already goes down Meridian for about $500,000 a year. The other service I recently saw, I was in Los Angeles for work travel, and I took the Flyaway bus, which is a bus funded by the airport trust there, that goes directly from the airport. I believe they hit one other airport. They have one route that goes to a different airport and then goes downtown. But it's like LAX downtown. And then you're at Union Station and you can connect to sort of all of the transit options throughout the city. And it was only $10 for the user. If we had something like that, and especially thinking about now that we have this, especially for people who maybe are just coming for conventions, they're just coming for conferences, they're going to be spending most of their time downtown. It seems very silly to have them rent a car. I would imagine some folks are maybe utilizing like ride sharing or taxi, but I'm curious about opportunities for the airport trust to be part of this conversation around transit, whether it's a service like Flyaway where it's just a direct connection, or maybe it's, going to another hub and then to downtown, kind of the way that the other one has kind of a spoke that it hits. Or if there's conversations about, funding this sort of extra connection with this bus service that already exists, given that you don't have all the infrastructure, the upfront cost, the capital costs of new vehicles, where that cost is, minimal comparatively, and maybe, to start with isn't gonna, provide the same level where, a handful of folks aren't gonna take advantage of it. But I even hear from, workforce needs, hearing from people that operate some of the concessions and other things that they're coordinating rides for their staff to get to work, because there's, for folks that maybe they only have one vehicle or they don't have a vehicle at home, there's a need there as well. So I'm curious to hear kind of your interest, or kind of what opportunities there might be to fund an interim solution while we're kind of waiting on this longer term RTA conversation.
So I did have some conversations probably 2 years ago with Embark about this at the time, and happy to bring that conversation back up again and begin that. We were looking at the time 2 years ago about trying to help bring employees to the airport, and we have some large locations there, like Amazon has their warehouses. It's on the other side of the airport though, so it's not really in the same location, it's terminal. But no, happy to bring that up again as everyone's coming back and we're having growth again. So I think that's a good time to do that. We do track, of all of the people who come to the terminal area, about 25% to 30% use rideshare. We have about another percentage of rental car, 30%, about 30% use parking. So really the remainder is drop-offs and pickups of passenger vehicles. So we keep pretty close track of that. But I don't disagree. I think as we continue to grow, congestion becomes a problem, and we need to look at other ways. And so I'll bring that.
Especially, I think, from that aspect of, trying to make that airport corridor, visually attractive.
Sure.
You know, having a sea of parking garages, even if you put some art on the side, is
Yeah.
not, you know, I feel like doesn't represent sort of the natural landscape of beauty that we could cultivate there. So I appreciate your openness
Okay.
to that. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I saw you talking about the terminal restrooms. Just curious, as far as ADA is concerned, are we looking at adult changing stations to be included in this process?
We do have one currently. That was completed with the expansion in 2021, so we
Okay.
do have that already.
Excellent, thank you. My second question is, as we continue to look at our contracts and businesses, my concern is that continually, while we see more women-owned businesses, I still have yet to see a lot of our more cultural businesses that could be a part of contracting within our airports. I know last year I asked about just, you know, a local chocolatier company being able to house, and I looked on their website and she's still not there. She's in Tulsa, she's in Texas, but she's not in her home city of Oklahoma City. So being able to not have that type of bragging right, it's hurtful for, in my opinion, as far as when we talk about tourism and the ways we support local businesses, folks can't obtain or attain or support those same local businesses that they could here, especially while they're traveling, if they know that particular vendor is from our city and they don't have access to it. Other things, I've had a local company, like a hot dog company, reach out to me and ask me about being housed at the airport. And I'll be honest, I feel like it's a waste of my time to give him the information because I don't think he's going to get anywhere in order for him to be able to have some type of a fruitful conversation or the potential of being placed in the airport. And I know the perfect place that could be where that coffee shop closed, which is close to the single-digit terminals, where it's now just open space. We have a few little areas that are just open space, whereas we could have kiosks or some types of ways that we're supporting our more local, cultural type businesses. And also, you know, quite frankly, there have been some discussions of different restaurants being placed and housed within this area, within the airport as well. But yet, you know, while we have Osteria, does that say that right?
Yep,
Okay,
Osteria.
thank you. We have that. We don't have like a homegrown, another different spectrum of more local. We have Freddy's, we have Tropical Smoothie. We have, you know, those types of things, but being able to really show our local flair, I hope there are some things that we can do better. And I say that to the point of what Councilwoman Hammond was saying when we traveled to, where did we go? We went to, no, that was we did. Oakland, San Francisco. We went to San Francisco, and housed in their airport were their local businesses, Filipino fusion, because that's what their culture is more influenced by. So they had those types of businesses, local businesses that were housed in there. So I'm hoping maybe one day soon we can at least get a piece of chocolate in the airport for us to have the bragging rights. And you know, I'm not just saying this because she's just, you know, at an airport in Tulsa. She's at Whole Foods, she's at Trader Joe's, she's at those types of places, and we can't even house it at our airport. You know, so those are the people I think about when I think of local, being able to support those local names and entities and businesses, even when it comes to our airports. So I'm just hoping we can look at that more and further, and also on our billboards, talking about, you know, when we welcome people in, being able to have some more of that influence of more local. I've seen us increase some of that, but again, you know, how are we promoting our districts on those billboards? How are we promoting maybe a festival that's coming up on those billboards? How are we
really truly supporting, not maybe whatever specific person that speaks to whatever's coming, to be on those billboards to say, we welcome you to our community or to this specific event or time. Those are also things that I look at and look through. So just, I know we've talked about it before, but I'm hoping maybe we'll actually get something where we can say it's attainable and there's a process where people can actually go through it and be successful instead of some of I love the businesses that are there, but I just feel as if there are some more that really should and could be highlighted, but because they don't have that type of support, they're not able to participate.
Sure, and let me address, I know there are multiple issues there, but first of all, the chocolatier question. I did last year put together a conversation with the local chocolatier and the company that manages our program out of Atlanta. And I know they've had some conversations, but I don't know where that's gone. Obviously, I'll follow up on that to see where that is. We do get, and I get just approached directly by companies asking for some consideration, and I put together some meetings with the company that manages our restaurants and gift shops, looking to put local products into the airport through your theme, and I completely understand that. I will say one of the things that we've been under construction the last couple of years with new restaurants and gift shops. We just wrapped that up here in the last couple of months. So it is hard to integrate new stuff when you're remodeling. So I think really we can take another focus at that over the next year now that the stores are in place and complete. I know we've been able to bring local products in, so I will continue that. And I'll follow up with you on some of the ideas you gave me. But certainly don't disagree, and we want to try to get as much local flavor as we can. And we did also open up another local restaurant. Hatch opened up a couple months ago, which is another local venue. But for these companies that provide these airport programs, it is a balance between having local and then having national brands, because the companies, the travelers do look for national brands at the same time. So it's usually a mix of what they have available. And so that's what they've tried to accomplish here in Oklahoma City. But I think from a local supplier that needs some shelf space, that I think we should be able to accommodate a lot of that. But I will go back and have that conversation and see where we stand. I will relate, we have this conversation. The mayor is interested in Thunder stuff at the airport, and we've been working on that recently also. So we know that, it's something that is of interest to a lot of people. As far as the welcome signs and everything else, I do believe we do circulate a number of those. If we have a convention coming to town, I'm pretty sure that our signs do reflect that on a rotational basis. But I will also follow up on that. But that's a good opportunity, right? It's a rotating media presence, and we can use that to welcome people to Oklahoma City.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. So next up on the agenda, or you want to go to the next?
Yeah, so we're at item 4. So this is the presentation of comments that we've received through whatever communications
Yes,
methods we
yes.
offer relative to this year's proposed budget.
Yes, and Chris York, our budget director, will just give us an overview. The council's received the specific comments, and he'll talk about, we've closed the comments for this summary, but we're going to keep that open. I'll let Chris talk about that as well.
Great, thank you. Christian York with the Finance Department. Just a quick update on our resident feedback that we've received thus far. This initial comment period was from April 30th all the way through this last Friday here, May the 24th. And then as the city manager indicated, we will continue to receive comments through this week. So through this Friday, we just need a little bit of time to compile them and bring those back to council before the June 4th adoption. So just talk about how we solicited our residents for feedback. Our partners in PIM used all of the routine social media channels, including Instagram, Facebook, Nextdoor, X. We also were picked up in a couple of news stories from their news releases. And so we tried to get the message out there as much as possible. And then On this next slide here, we're really looking at the effectiveness of how those messages were received and then how the residents got them back to us. And so we ended up receiving 39 comments this year. 21 of those are via email, 18 were posts on our new system, vision.okc.gov, and then you can see there were no comments through the rest of the channels there. Now, Council, as City Manager indicated, did receive a complete list of all of the feedback that we received via PDF that was emailed to you, but we just summarized this for you here. And so we had one comment particular to the budget book. We had some editing that a resident caught, and they were right. We needed to update that based on a revised strategic business plan in parks, so we will get that updated. We had a couple of residents suggest more resources be put towards homelessness. And then the dominant conversation was 23 residents requested that Menace Lakeview Center continue operations as they are currently operating. We had one comment regarding Bus Rapid Transit that questioned our investment in that system based on ridership. We had 5 related to public safety that with about 4 of those requesting a reallocation of police resources to things like transit, development services, and parks. And then one resident was approved our use of drones. And then we had 7 comments related to streets and sidewalks, and I would say about half of those were wanting specific improvements to their roads that they listed in their comment, with the other remaining requesting traffic light enhancements as well as sidewalks at specific locations. Again, residents can continue to submit their comments, and we'll report back by June 4th for council. I would mention on Menace Lakeview Center, the budget office did receive a revised proposal from the department over the weekend, and so my understanding is their commitment to continue to run that center as it is currently operating. And that's all I have for you this morning.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the update. And that is all that we have on the budget for today.
Excuse me. May I ask, I know in my last 5 years serving on council, there's like a bit of a rotation that happens with the departments in terms of their presentations.
Mm-hmm.
What was the thought process in terms of planning not presenting this year?
There wasn't a specific target. I think, like you said, we've balanced just and really mostly trying to focus towards the outward-facing departments where there's more services. So it wasn't an intentional exclusion. It was just like looking at rotation.
Sure. So I've attended in the past week a couple different conversations regarding the backyard cottages, the accessory dwelling units. And if I might just relay a brief story that I think speaks to the need for us to be very forward-facing in regards to planning and housing. But I was attending a conversation in one of our historic preservation neighborhoods, and it was almost like one of the residents says, well, why is the city focusing on, and so the city got up, why is the city focusing on backyard cottages, these accessory dwelling units, when, if they were understanding the problem correctly, when we have a lack of 1 to 2 bedroom unit, why aren't we doing infill? Mm-hmm. Why aren't we doing infill? And as I relayed to Councilwoman Hammond afterwards, it was actually in her ward, but she was hosting an event here. As I relayed to her, my thought was, well, why not both, right? You do both. But I had to go to another meeting right after, I had to leave, so I couldn't respond. So Lisa Chronister with the planning department responded. I don't know how that conversation went. But had I been there to respond, I would have cited our affordable housing study, and I would have cited those needs, saying that we have, as I keep saying over and over and over again up here, right, 19,400 people needing 1 to 2 bedroom homes. And then if you know that number, right, and then you only have around 3,600 available units, and that was in 2021, so I don't even know that those are available anymore, then you understand the need to do both. And so that strikes me that that young man, my hope would be that had he known those numbers, he'd be like, oh, okay, got it. I'm going to support both. My worry, right, is that there's a potential for, like one of the other pushbacks I heard in that meeting from an elected official, no less, was that their understanding about the backyard cottages is that not only, but that the need would be for like mother-in-law type homes. Like that's kind of been the other kind of language, like mother-in-law, flat, this sort of stuff, right? Or maybe the child, as they age and get to 18, 19, maybe they want to live in that to get a dose of freedom. And this respected elected official's concern was that renters would be the one living there. But if you know our housing issues, then why would anyone be concerned with renters living in a garage apartment behind a house? Do you see what I'm saying? And that this was happening in Heritage Hills, which, as a Paseo resident, I bike from Zach Taylor neighborhood at about 50th around Bishop McGinnis. I bike from there frequently all the way down here to Scissortail Park through the neighborhoods. Almost all those neighborhoods have duplexes, fourplexes, eightplexes, backyard ADUs. Like, we set the tone. That is our historical development pattern. Councilwoman Hammond and I learned from 1948 at the end of World War II when the city found itself in a housing crisis as we defeated fascism, which seems to be back, because a good sequel never goes out of fashion, I guess. But we have people who are confused about the need for housing right now. They are confused about the need for housing right now. And for so many years, Oklahoma City and the state prided itself on our low cost of living, prided itself on it. But that's a myth now. That's a myth. It's descended into myth. But myth is hard to dislodge from people. So we probably have an overwhelming majority of our residents who still believe that Oklahoma City, that the crown jewel of Oklahoma City is in fact our low cost of living. Which means that the city of OKC as a government has an education project on its hands, multiple hands. And so I find it, I'm not saying, of course I understand the rotation of not having planning present, I of course understand that. My caution and guidance would be heading into the summer, there needs to be, I would ask for consideration of presentations from this podium here on our city's housing needs, what those ADUs are, how they do not represent a threat to anyone's way of life, how they are not something we're going to force anyone to build, right? But that we have ones that are out of compliance right now in some of these neighborhoods that our ordinance won't even allow them to bring them up to compliance for their mother-in-law, for their children, for renters. And I just worry that there is a building anxiety, right? And about that process, and then about the rezoning process in its totality. And so I think we need to be very prudent and surgical going forward. One more thing on that note. As I'm heading into summer break, I'm reflecting a lot on teaching this semester, which was always a joy. But I'm deeply concerned about our reading levels in a way that I've never been before. They are really bad, even at a private university. And when we present on the zoning updates, I've sat in several of these meetings with 2 master's degrees, and I feel dumb sometimes because of the language we're using. LUDA, what is that? You don't know, but we're using acronyms, we're using jargon from that field of planning, and we are going out there and communicating with our residents with that jargon, with these acronyms, you have 30-something% of 4th graders and 8th graders right now reading at their grade level. And that's not the fault of the pandemic. It got worsened by the pandemic, but those reading scores were already true prior to that. So what I'm saying is we're going out there and we're communicating with people who aren't dumb, but they don't have some of that academic language because they're in their own fields of study, and that's the language they know. So we need to be very intentional about how we're talking to people and the information we're relaying to people. And for my money, right now, the planning department is, no offense to the other departments, but probably the most important one, because it is planning. It is about planning the community in which we live. And I think that was kind of missed right now. And when you have ADUs as top of mind right now in terms of a conversation in the community, we got to figure out this summer, I think, how to rectify that.
Yeah, we will definitely have more information coming forward on the housing study and the housing implementation plan, particularly as it relates and engages with the general obligation bond planning. So we'll have that information coming forward for briefings for council and then publicly as well.
Thank you. And then let me also say, as a council member, I was looking at my calendar a little bit ago. I know I have a meeting that you all have created for me. I think there are other council members in there with me. That is an update on what our housing implementation plan is going to be. It's 45 minutes. I don't understand that. Like, to me, it needs to be, what I'm requesting is a deep dive, like the deepest dive. And if the other council members don't want that, that's fine. I do. Like, I need a deep, deep dive into what that implementation is going to be, where we're building this housing, at what percentages of the average median income. So for example, a confusion I have, and I'm just going to go on about this because it's just the anxiety I hear from my residents, and it's one I feel too. I've been confused because people have been saying that the average median income for us when we build housing, that the number we use is about $60,000, but that's the average median income. But then when I was looking at the chamber data for the labor peace agreement and the workforce development stuff, Oklahoma City's median income is $38,300. Oklahoma City. Oklahoma County is $48,987. And then the median income for the other counties within Oklahoma City, because remember we touched Cleveland, Canadian, thank you, right? Am I forgetting one? Oklahoma, Canadian, Cleveland.
Potawatomi.
Thank you, Ward 4. I knew it, so we went on that trip out there, didn't we? We sure did. Todd doesn't forget you, Councilman Stone doesn't, because he took me all the way out there when we did a Ward 4 tour. But when those counties together, that's $59,000 average median income. So I guess what I'm saying as an Oklahoma City councilor, I am really interested in the Oklahoma City number, which is that $38,300 number. And then when you start thinking about housing, that number becomes a much more intriguing number, because when you look at $38,300 being the median income for Oklahoma City residents, if, according to HUD, 30% of their income, and only at max 30% of their income, should be going to their mortgage or their rent and utilities, then $957 a month is what they should be paying. Go find that. Go find it right now. Go find it in all these cool hip districts that we've revitalized and brought back to life with our own city dollars. A one bedroom easily, not even a one bedroom, a studio right now, an efficiency. No walls separating you from your bedroom and your kitchen and your living room. Easily over $1,000 right now. Easily. That strikes me as deeply anxiety inducing. Deeply should be priority number one for our people. Priority number one, $38,300 is what you're making a year. How are you living? So we can talk about Hatch being at the airport all we want, but and these big fancy nice restaurants. I love Madure. I will take friends to Madure all the time, but I guess I'm saying is a lot of our people can't afford the Renaissance story that the city is in right now. So to me, planning is top of mind, right along streets, right, and transit. So this summer, I'm requesting a very deep layman's term type guidance on our city's actual income levels and our housing needs and how we're going to utilize the next bond to address those housing needs. Thank you.
So that's all that we have on the budget today. And next item is the council. The plan is for bringing the budget back for adoption next council meeting on the 4th.
Okay. Well, that brings us to item 5, items requiring separate votes. There's no substantive vote today, but we do take votes, obviously, to go into executive session. So we will handle that on these 2 items that were deferred from May 21st. Item A is to enter into executive session on advice of the municipal councilor to receive communications regarding Adams v. City of OKC. And I believe people did log in because you asked them to. And if they're not, we can get a quick verbal vote. But we want to bring up that virtually. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. This is to go into executive session on item 5A. Passes unanimously. All right, we'll handle that at the end of our other business. And then item B, this is to enter into executive session to discuss collective bargaining negotiations for fiscal year 24-25 with the IAF and the AFSCME, and that's it. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll handle that at the end of our other business. Okay, that does conclude votes such as they were for the day. This brings us to item 6, citizens to be heard, and we have a few who've signed up to speak. I would ask everyone to state your name and address and keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less, and Amy, the clerk, will give you a 30-second warning. All right, first up is Garland Pruitt.
Good morning. Just got through expressing the income of the average Oklahoma County. I find it amazing how this particular area that we're speaking on concerning the park and recreation over in Menace Lake, how we pick and targeted areas without providing them with an opportunity to participate in the activity and implementation of the things that you do. Is there any reason that we didn't have a survey as to what the needs of that particular community was, or some input from the community as to some of the areas of concerns that they might have had? Too often, we have a tendency to do that. Some of the expressions that my concern would be, why aren't we having a senior citizens program in that area? Why don't we have a small field for young folks to play ball? Why don't we have a tennis court? Why don't we have a summer camp program for the youth in that area? Recreational facilities are supposed to provide these types of activities. A work program, a training program out of that same building that we've allowed the community action, which we are supportive of those particular areas, program that they're bringing in. But what happened to allowing the community to provide you with some needs that we might have as you move forward? We're being progressive on so many areas. Why don't we be a little bit more progressive in allowing the community to have some input? Senior citizens program, job training. We're in Tornado Alley. Why don't we have a tornado shelter in that particular area? For those low-income folks that possibly already know don't have shelters. These are some of the things we can consider when we start moving in, taking over, implementing programs in certain areas that might not have as big a voice as some others. We make decisions that are not always good decisions. They're talking about we want to have the tallest building in the United States.
30 seconds remaining.
Huh? Okay, yeah, and we got the Tiffin Towers right now, the tallest building in the state. If we want to get a room in any of those particular locations, it's all vacant right now. Some of the decisions we make. Basically, my comment has everything to do with allowing the community to have input, doing a survey of some type, allowing them to have involvement before we make decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Garland. Dennis Ross?
from the far east side, the area that he mentioned. This is my first opportunity to come and address the council. I have two issues that I want to speak about that you all say is a priority for the city council. One, safe and reliable transportation, public transportation for all, not just some, all. And the second is the criminal justice reform and the initiatives that y'all speak about implementing with the law enforcement. Number one, with this embark and these streetcars, you have a serious problem with some of the operators and the security personnel that work on those buses. There is a serious problem with these people harassing, discriminating against those that they perceive are unhoused or those that are unhoused. And it needs to be addressed. I have a special patron ID. I presented the medical documents to receive it. And there is no reason why a bus operator or security personnel has any reason to question me about my medical condition at all. There is no reason for any of these operators or any of these security personnel to question me about where I'm going or how often I ride the bus. I pay my fare that's required of me, and I should be able to travel in peace without fear
30
or
seconds
retaliation. Second issue is with this law enforcement. Dealing with that, you need to address having these police officers being called out unnecessarily to enforce and to reinforce somebody else's wrongdoing, violating people's civil rights, their federally protected rights. And they show up, and instead of trying to de-escalate, resolve an issue, they come and enforce them in their wrongness.
Mr.
And
Ross,
then
we're over time. Is there any wrap-up concluding statement you'd like to make?
my concluding statement is I would appreciate it if y'all would look into that. I've made my complaints. I've done what they asked me to do. Call the customer service, complain about it, file your report. They told me, come over here, talk to your city council person. Talk to the city council person. I'm here today to talk to the whole council now. Because this
Okay,
is going.
thank you.
All
All
right.
right, Delbert Lasky.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Delbert Lasky. I live at 109 Brook Lane, and I'm here about the Menace Lakeview Center. I did receive an email from Ms. Melinda Friday, and it was good news that the center will be removed from the budget cuts, and I'm happy about that. But that really doesn't resolve any issues that the center has been experiencing over the last few years. The number one thing is the budget. They're operating like on a shoestring budget of $120,000. I'd like to see that number raised up so that they can incorporate programs where there is participation from the community, i.e. like I did a quick survey of the community and some of the needs that they're wanting and looking at. They're looking at incorporating more fitness programs, Pilates, pickleball, things like that, that not only the youth can be incorporated in, but the older citizen, chair exercise program, things like this that can be incorporated, which will cover the whole plethora of all of the age groups in that community. So, and one of the biggest issues with that is the budget. I don't know of any other center that's operating on a budget less than $120,000. If so, I don't see how. So with the Menace Lakeview Center being removed from the budget cut, doesn't resolve any issues of how they're operating. The operating expenses need to be increased so that some of these programs cost money. Some of the programs that has been incorporated by the Parks and Recreation Center cost $0, which is good. That's very good if you have other programs that are successful. But right now they have like walking trail buddies that cost $0. These are some of the programs offered by the Parks and Recreation. Open adaptive gym. That's you and I going into the gym with all of our abilities or disabilities and being able to just use the gym, $0. Arts and crafts, a couple of $100 a year that they spend. These are the programs that Parks and Recreation has incorporated for the center. So in order to be successful, we're going to have to have some volunteerism from the community, and we need those extra dollars that Schilling is probably not going to get. We need some of those dollars to make that program not be on the chopping block again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hannah Royce?
Good morning, members of the council, Mayor Holt. My name is Hannah Royce in Ward 6, and I stand before you today after I was truly inspired by the last 40 days I spent in Europe. It was an extreme privilege to experience cities from London and Paris to Italy and the south of France, and I can tell you the only reason, to Councilman Cooper's point, the reason I was able to do that as a freelance artist and creative living in Oklahoma City is that everything I own is packed up and in my partner's garage right now. As I returned, the first thing I wanted to do was grab a coffee and sit in a park. Ingrid Fattel-Lee, who studies the aesthetics of joy in our surroundings, says, "The power of aesthetics of joy is that they speak directly to our unconscious minds, bringing out the best of us without our even being aware of it. This underscores the importance of prioritizing people-centered funding that nurtures our community's well-being. Our parks, our green spaces, our public areas are incredibly essential to each of us as they foster community, promote health, and enhance our happiness." Sitting in the city budget workshop earlier this year with many of you, I thought about the immense value and return on investment if we simply could sustain and improve the community centers, as been said, the parks that we already have. It's paramount to look creatively at how we care for our community, and allocating the largest part of our budget to a department that often perpetuates fear and division sends a really troubling message about our priorities. And increased police funding has not proven to make our communities safer. Instead, it often contributes to a dehumanizing environment, contrary to the values of unity and care that we cherish in our city. Investing in parks and public spaces is more than beautifying our city. It's about creating opportunities for community connection and engagement. And well-maintained parks encourage participation in community activities, foster relationships, and provide support networks. These connections reduce the risk of maladaptive behaviors, offering outlets positive for all ages. Losing parks like McKinley and creative recreation centers means losing a vital part of our community's fabric. I want us to all recognize that urbanization should consistently incorporate green
30
spaces,
seconds
public
remaining.
art, public amenities that create a well-balanced, vibrant city. Cities worldwide show us that thriving urban areas integrate these elements and improve residents' quality of life, attracting tourists for enriching experience. So as you finalize your 2025 budget, may we please prioritize funding that fosters community, promotes health and well-being, and creates a more livable city for everyone. Thank you, and free Palestine.
Thank you. Javier Morales. Javier Morales.
Hello. I work for Live Free OKC, which is a CVI program, Community Violence Intervention. And I'm from the community where McKinley Park is. And that park, before it was built, there was a death trap. What I mean by a death trap is like everybody who stayed in the community, you couldn't even cross through it. The only way you could is if you had ties. Once they built the gym, everybody respected the park because it was a safe haven for our children. In that area, if you take McKinley Park away, it's nothing around the floating area for us to go to. You got the Boys and Girls Club on 36th and Western, and you got a municipal recreational center on 9th and Chartel. Well, we never liked going to municipal because it was too close to like the St. Anthony Hospital and the jails and stuff. So it kept like the bad part of our community on the other side of Classen. So once that gym was built, there was a lot of them people's kids and children attending McKinley Park. So it changed the narrative of everything that was going around there, which changed the adults. And also, we're not accepted in the Boys and Girls Club up there on 36th and Western. The kids from the community who need it the most, not accepted. But the kids on the other side up there by McGinnis, those are the kids who get to attend the Boys and Girls Club. Not only that, a lot of the kids in the community also ate, took showers, learned education from up there. Thanks to gentlemen like Coach Corey right here. He made sure every kid that come in there do their homework, they eat first before they played any sports. I was the first kid in that gym when they built it. I was obese. I was like 231 pounds at 9 years old. Once they built that gym, I learned morals, values, principles. I learned sports. I got in shape. It saved my life all around. I got 4 sons that played sports, went to college. I got 2. I got one about to graduate early thanks to all these sports in McKinley Park. My kids go back there to their roots and still learn thanks to Coach Corey and the whole McKinley Park facility. So without that park, you take that park away, you take that gym away, that
30 seconds remaining.
that park is gonna become a death trap again. It's nothing surrounding that area for our kids to do, nothing at all but McKinley Park. That's all they have, that's all they got. And it's gonna trickle right down here to downtown because all those people and kids with nothing to do, they're gonna come closer to a municipal gym, which is also gonna come closer to the hospital. We protected our hospital and the police station and downtown. We protected all of that from the bad part of our community coming down by policing our own with our park.
Thank you. Jess Eddy?
Morning, council members, Mr. Mayor. I'm here in support of the McKinley Park community, and I certainly want to emphasize what one of our Live Free peacemakers, Javier, just stated. His own personal experiences, his many family members and children, and he himself went to that recreational center. I come admittedly from a position of ignorance in what has led up to this closure. I've spoken to some of the employees that work there who advised me that they were terminated, advised that they would be terminated by the end of this month. Last week, I learned about it on Friday. Community Action Agency, I understand, operates out of there. and I think absolutely to no fault of her own, but my understanding is Councilwoman Hammond wasn't given notice of this closure. So I'm obviously in ignorance, but I just find it hard to believe that such a critical piece of the community over there was a decision was made to shutter it. Number one, with no real notice, and then number two, to shutter it at all, given the importance it has and carries in that part of the community. So I really hope the city council members can investigate and see what's going on there. Speaking to the critical piece of that, and Javier really laid it out pretty eloquently and clearly and personally, but as a community violence intervention professionals that we are, our work is to deal with people who are actively engaged in gun violence and to prevent that from continuing. So when we see people who are doing what we call upstream work with at-risk youth, it's something that we want to support because it's so valuable and meaningful, especially at that age of young adolescence to, teenage years. Having constructive programming and mentors in their neighborhood is so critical to preventing a lot of these kids from getting into criminal activity. It's so critical. I cannot understate it. And I think it's been made very clear to me as I've over the years come to learn about community violence and gun violence, just how critical these kinds of programs are to preventing, to improving public safety, to helping kids not go down the wrong track. And I just think it's so important that we continue this and even expand this program now that we're taking a look at it. And hopefully you can kind of hear
30
just
seconds
the
remaining.
magnitude of the impact. The staff there who've been working there for decades, my understanding. I mean, Javier's older than me, old man, 40 years old, and and he went there since he was 9. So we're talking 30 years, generational work that is so critical. And so I'm honored to speak on their behalf today. Thank you.
Before we go any further, I only just heard a snippet of this over the weekend. Can we get like a official up to what's going on with McKinley? Thank you.
This has been operated by Community Action since 1991, and they've had a contract there. We found out about this last week as well, that they were planning to end their Head Start program. So I think there's ongoing dialogue and conversations around that, but it's not a budgetary change for the city. It's something that they were leasing the property and they were actually managing the property. So that's what's happened at this point.
So they just informed us that they're ending that, and that happened, like you said,
We
last
learned
week.
of that on Wednesday. And so we're having conversations with them still just to understand better the timing and what the plans are.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman.
In our operating agreement with these entities private entities that run, are there not sort of like stipulations about how much notice they're supposed to give when they can't or decide not to operate certain parts of?
Yeah, I don't know what is specifically in these operating agreements, but we're having the conversations with them. But I would think typically we'll have within those agreements, there's a notification period. I just don't know exactly what's in this one.
Because it is frustrating that it is such short notice, particularly in sort of this budget process where we don't really know, like can parks absorb, it just, the timing is frustrating that I'm hearing that people are, and sort of similarly with Menace Lakeview, where the sort of information vacuum of we're hearing this from folks on the ground, but this is what we're hearing. It seems to be sort of an issue that we need to find some systemic ways to address how we. And I know Melinda had mentioned they're trying to sort of make those agreements more similar across the board, but obviously there's some disconnect between the communication about what's happening on the ground and sort of how it's getting to folks that should be notified of these situations with a lot more, and not to speak of the employees who should probably get more than a few weeks notice about after having been employed somewhere for so long. So I would be very curious. I know I had a brief interaction with Melinda on Friday after I heard about this to ask kind of what's the plan. And yeah, if whatever we can do to figure out how to keep this center operating, because I do hear, I've heard for years that this is a very important community asset for that neighborhood. Yeah, and it's again, sort of going back to my conversation a few weeks ago about frustration when private entities operate these public facilities, public buildings. There's not really any mechanism that we have, you know, and to you know, it's a private entity. We have some maybe operating agreements, but obviously those aren't robust enough to make sure that there's ample time for public involvement and input on kind of what's happening with these publicly owned facilities and that are providing such needed programming for communities. So whatever we can be doing to make sure that this continues to operate and that these folks can still provide these this programming for youth, especially as summer is coming up. I'm really curious to hear what we can kind of pull out of the hat.
And to the point of what she just said, I think that expresses the dynamic of what has taken place in relation to even Menace Lakeview. So the time frame of them just now giving a notice for this, they're trying to create and establish a contract to operate another recreation center where we could have the same type of situation occur. So those are grave concerns, and not to mention, you know, across this city, they are closing 11 community action programs in our city. Most of those belong to our more underserved or underrepresented Black and brown communities who now have to figure out ways to go further to access education for their children. So this entity as a whole is restructuring, and it seems as if we're just okay with allowing them to do what they want with our facilities, and I think that's an issue. If we look at just the history and overall understanding of where they are with their budget process, and right now they're in a crunch. You know, quite frankly, they're in a crunch. I think that's understandable with federal cuts everywhere, and they go for those types of programs in education first. But for our city to be in front of that, I would hope that's something that we can look at further as well, and pertaining to our other centers that are within our purview that are operated and maintained by us that will also be housed by community action programs.
And even with frustration with certain situations, I do want to acknowledge Community Action Agency has been a great partner in our community for a long time, and we really appreciate their investment. And I think there are some challenges there that they're facing and trying to restructure, but they've been a great partner for a long time, providing great services in our community.
I'd like to receive some sort of diagnostics about Community Action Agency, like what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Like Menace Park was the first time I heard anything. Now I'm hearing this news. I have a vacancy on that board, and now I'm wondering, like, well, who do I appoint and why? You know, but I also hear they do good things. One of my Ward 2 residents is an at-large member, and she speaks very highly of them. Literally called me to do nothing but speak highly of them a few weeks ago. And you know, Brent's a pretty respected member of the community, so I'd like a diagnostic for the council of like what's going on, and because something's going on. And then let me also just say, like, kind of doubling down on what I just heard from the two councilwomen, like, and I just want to connect this back to that $38,300 a year income thing I am talking about. Like, in the urban core, and I'm sure we could speak about it out in the rural parts of our city as well, but we have a lot of residents who this income is the high-end income. And it's been like 38,000 is a high number. That is, like, 21% of our population, I've learned, is in hospitality, retail, and entertainment. So 21% of the workforce, and they are making $27,400 a year. Okay? So, with no benefits. No benefits. No benefits, right? None. No protections. So no health care, and then good God, what happens to their teeth if they have to go to the dentist, right?
So you're talking about a lot of people making $27,000 a year. So that's not even middle class. That's actually below middle class. Middle class is about 30-something thousand to 80-something. So you have working class people, and for decades, they have defined the population of the urban core of this city. For decades. And their parks we didn't invest in, their streets we didn't invest in, their education, God bless the state, because they sure as heck weren't investing in them. So Javier, your story, almost more than anything I've heard in all my 5 years on council, it just cut right through to the truth of like who our people are, like who so many of our people are, and who often don't get a voice on this horseshoe. So I can't thank you enough for speaking it. So that raises a second question for me. So my first question was like, can we have a diagnostic? My second question is, I remember when MAPS 4 was in its infancy and we were talking about the youth centers. I remember the current parks director, Melinda, she, was interested in the parks department being the operator of the youth centers. Of course, now we know it's Boys and Girls Club. I'd like to better understand, like, with these facilities, what it is that's preventing our parks department from being able to operate a McKinley. Unlike Lady Gaga, I do not live for the applause, but I appreciate that. Like, that's a song reference for those of you who don't know that. It's Pride Month coming up. But I need to understand, to Councilwoman Hammond's point, the systemic, what we're gonna have to do systemically to stabilize. I just can't stress enough. I mean, I know it's not my word, but I'm right there, as you know. And I bike over there, I walk over there, I'm there all the time. We can't afford for it to go back to that dark despair place that you're talking about. We can't afford it. Summer, as you all know, is when crime rises. It's when crime rises. That is a statistically true fact. We can only interrupt so much violence. But I also want to clarify, this wasn't a budget thing. Like this isn't part of this budget cut. Okay, that's comforting, but it's like a Pyrrhic victory because now we got to figure out like how do we stabilize them. I just can't. I hope this is a priority for over there as much as it is for those of us who have spoke so far. We can't let the urban core fall into chaos. Not after so many of us have worked so hard on this horseshoe, even before me and before us and within the community to get us here. So.
Okay.
I want to say in relation to that, that's where the dynamic is similar but different pertaining to Menace Lakeview, while we were able to now say it is no longer going to be repurposed or defunded, if you will. We're now able to have a different conversation. But I want to preface and say that none of us have said that Community Action was not a great partner. I think we all acknowledge and recognize that. The difficulties right now are the fact that we haven't been able to receive the information that pertains to the core residents that we serve in the ways that we are unable to at least give them the proper information to assist them to understand what is about to take place. So that people call us when these things happen. They call us because they expect for us to know what's going on. And when we don't know what's going on, here we are. And you have folks coming here and letting us know that these things have occurred, are occurring, and that they have not been a part of these conversations. So again, I do say, I don't say that, and will never say that Community Action is not an important partner, because I think we all acknowledge and recognize the great things that they have been able to do. This is a transition for them. And unfortunately, right now, our communities are at stake with their transition.
Okay, back to citizens. We still have a few who have signed up. Paul Padgett.
Hello, my name is Paul Padgett. I live on Northwest 39th Street, 73112. I would just like to say I appreciate your 6 and 7 questions towards the airport. I think it's important to recognize that companies will prioritize their parking revenue over transportation for the public. That's cheap, and accessible. I also want to acknowledge Ward 2's acknowledgement of the salary in Oklahoma City. This past school year, I worked with OKCPS, and I'm on the executive board of our classified workers for AFT. I don't represent them right now, but I can tell you my experience. I had to work 2 jobs while working on that board because I was going to school. I can't afford to go to school next semester, even at OCCC. I was making $12 an hour, came out about $730 every other week. It's unsustainable. Can't do that. Now, let me get to what I need to say. A call for a ceasefire from Oklahoma City Council seems like an impossible ask. Our city is the capital for a state where a ceasefire goes against all interest, at least the interest of the ones making money of the genocide, or off of the genocide rather, and the occupation of Palestine. Our state's economy runs off of oil, gas, and weapons of war, meaning calling for an end to the genocide would mean calling for an end to a paycheck for Oklahoma and the wealthy. This seems radical only to the ones who have sold their soul for a check, the ones who have no investment in a safe future for me, my peers, my elderly parents, my future children, or themselves. Oklahoma City must set a standard for what Oklahoma could be. John F. Kennedy said, "Those who make a peaceful revolution impossible will make a violent revolution inevitable." I believe that, God willing, Oklahoma will see an end to its current system and way of life. If it seems scary, that's because it is. The very foundation of the state rests on the blood of first Americans who are murdered for their land, money, and oil. Every day, Indigenous women go missing and are killed. I'm reading The Killers of the Flower Moon right now. Great book. Now is the same thing happening in Palestine. We must remember to reconcile our past and remember it to build a sustainable future, starting today. It's time to promise a few things to the Oklahoman people to set an example for what our state and our nation could be.
30 seconds remaining.
No new oil and gas, and phase in industry for sustainable energy. Sovereignty to Indigenous peoples. Streets designed for people, not cars, with accessible and free public transportation. Funding for public schools and our support staff, because our schools would do nothing without our PSRP, public support and related professionals, or school-related professionals. Sanctions on all products and raw materials from Israel and Congo. A city boycott of Caterpillar machinery and weapons manufacturers, and a permanent ceasefire in occupied Palestine to end the senseless killing and to bring the hostages home. I'm sure y'all all saw the pictures coming out of Rafah a couple days ago of the beheaded children from the bombings of UNRWA.
Mr. Padgett, you're over time. Is there anything you want to sum up with?
Let's focus on the videos that we're seeing rather than speculation from our president that have been confirmed to be false. Thank you all for your time. Peace be with you, and may you have God's mercy.
Thank you. Aurelius Francisco. Aurelius Francisco.
Good morning, Council. Aurelius Francisco, off of 50 and Kelly, Ward 7, East Side. Here to speak on a couple things, try to keep it under 3 minutes. First and foremost, as I've said since the beginning of this budget process, I really want to encourage a creative and imaginative budget process that leans on a participatory model rather than departments coming and presenting and you all voting on the budget. We saw earlier the amount of comments that have been received so far, 39 in total over the several weeks that we've had this open process, right? If you would have hired me and Live Free and a couple other community organizations, we could have got you a couple hundred by now. No joke, right? So if you actually were partnering with community organizers and people who are in the community every single day, right, that participation, right, that community voice would already be there, right? Instead, focusing on social media channels that people, everyday community members are not accessing. So again, a participatory budget process would allow community members to actually have hold and weight of the money that is impacting our everyday lives, right? So we need to think about really reimagining this entire process because it's backwards. right? It's people who are working for the city telling us as community members what we need, and we have parks that are being defunded or that are no longer being used that are crucial services for our community members. The second thing that I want to talk about, and this may not seem like something that this council should take up, but it absolutely is, as the previous speaker and future speakers will speak to the issue that is happening right now in Palestine. Over the weekend in Rafah, 2,000-pound bombs were dropped on an area that the Israeli government specifically told Palestinians to move to, that was regarded as a safe zone. Images over the weekend, videos of babies burned to death. Imagine if you have kids, nieces, nephews, cousins, little ones who you love. Imagine them being burned to death. That's what's happening right now in Palestine and to Palestinians, right? You all have a responsibility to choose what side of history you want to be on. If you want to be on the side of complicity and silence, or if you want to be on the side of freedom and liberation for oppressed people across the world. If you see your children, your nieces, your nephews, your cousins, and those little babies, or if you see terrorists. You have a choice to make. Oklahoma City can lead the state of Oklahoma in calling for an immediate ceasefire and a peaceful resolution, or thousands more babies, women and children and men will be persecuted with U.S. bombs that are made right here in Oklahoma. Ceasefire now, free Palestine. These issues that we talk about around policing in our jails are deeply and clearly connected to what is happening in Palestine. Thank you.
Yasmin Abusheh.
Hello, my name is Yasmin. I'm in Ward 1, and today I'm going to be speaking about Oklahoma City passing a ceasefire resolution. My name is Yasmin, and I am Palestinian American. My grandparents were forcibly removed from their homes, and as a result, my parents immigrated here. As a first-generation Palestinian American, I am deeply ashamed of knowing that my tax dollars go to fund war and genocide. The past 8 months, we've witnessed the slaughtering, the starvation, burning of children, women, and men. We've also seen the attacks of hospitals and designated so-called safe zones. Yesterday, Israel targeted tents and refugee camps, leaving children headless, parents childless, and further proving the target deliberation of civilians. This massacre took place days after the International Criminal Court ruled that Israel must not continue with their invasion on Rafah. World leaders, including the United States, said that invasion on Rafah would be crossing a red line. Yet now that it's happening, they refuse to do anything to stop a genocidal state. It is clear that our federal government is failing us in continuing to send weapons to an apartheid and genocidal state. It is the job of City Council to step in and regulate the needs of their citizens. While our tax dollars get sent overseas, our citizens in Oklahoma suffer without the necessary funding for state programs such as food stamps and education. Cities across the United States have passed ceasefire resolutions demanding that the unlawful mass killings must come to an end. They demand that food must be sent to starving children, and they demand that there is no place for anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or xenophobia. Oklahoma City has a duty to protect and serve its people and pass a ceasefire resolution, pass resolutions condemning anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and xenophobia. I hope you all find it in your hearts to condemn the unlawful killing of civilians and work with your constituents to pass the resolution. And as you decide the 2025 budget, I hope you find it in your hearts to reallocate the money away from murder and destruction and put it back into life and prosperity. These are the dead children and the images that we're seeing come out of Gaza. If this does not change your mind, then I don't even know what to say anymore. And I notice which ones are looking down and which ones are actually paying attention.
"30 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Khalid Shahabi.
Hello, my name is Khaled, 1029 Northeast 6th Street in Ward 7. I'm a Palestinian and have lived in Oklahoma my entire life, and I'm currently a medical student at the OU Health Sciences Center here in OKC. I come this morning to share with you that every single hospital in Gaza has been attacked by the Israeli military. Many hospitals have been completely besieged and raided by soldiers while the injured and sick remain inside. Doctors are performing procedures on the floor with phone flashlights because of electricity cuts and exhausted medical supplies. We are getting reports from the ground describing the catastrophic situation in which patients can't get the treatment that they need. Babies in incubators are dying due to lack of fuel. Infections are going around due to the attack on water and sanitation, and medical supplies have almost completely run out due to the complete siege on humanitarian aid. Most recently, just a few days ago, Israeli military bombs rained down on a camp filled with Palestinians already displaced previously because of bombings in their original homes. The camp where they had their tents set up was a designated safe zone, a place where Palestinians thought they would at least be safe from the airstrikes and bombs that destroyed the rest of the Gaza Strip. They were mistaken. There is no safe place in Gaza. Instead, over 40 people were killed, including women and children. Many were burned to death. Others were not able to be saved due to the lack of medical supplies and treatment. This cannot continue. This has been going on for more than 7 months. Again, I'm a medical student here in Oklahoma City, and I engage in health advocacy here in Oklahoma on a variety of different health issues. How can I expect to work with my city or elected officials when my elected officials have not even acknowledged the suffering and oppression of my people, the people of Gaza and Palestine? There are many Palestinians in OKC and in Oklahoma at large, not to mention those who watch the news with their own eyes and are horrified, yet they do not feel supported or even seen or heard. The most basic of things, the right to live with dignity, has been stripped away from Palestinians. This is very much an Oklahoma issue, just as it is an American issue, because our tax dollars are funding this genocide. The billions of dollars sent to the Israeli military are in the form of airstrikes on
30
homes
seconds remaining.
and bombs on children. The very least our city council here can do is to reject the killing of innocent men, women, and children, to support aid to enter so that the sick and injured can be healed, and to stand in support with our Oklahoma communities who are hurting. We must call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza from here in Oklahoma City, as has been done in many other cities in the United States, such as Chicago, Atlanta, San Francisco, Iowa City, Richmond, Dearborn, Atlanta, and many more. Let's be people of conscience and stand on the right side of history. Free Palestine.
Thank you. That concludes citizens who signed up to speak. We will now go into our previously voted on executive sessions, and we will return. completed our executive session, and we have returned, and we have reached the final item on the agenda, item 7, adjournment, and we are adjourned.